Hey there, Bruce, and welcome back to Remember 11 Age of Infinity. We just had a nearly 2 episode worth of information dumps. Yuni's about to enlighten us on another information dump, so let's go talk to him, shall we? At least I hope so. It was clear outside. The whole sky was hung with bright stars. Present time, 8:09 PM. The moon hadn't yet risen. Satoru? You're Satoru, right? From just beside the entrance, Yuni descended down the path in front of me and stood there. I nodded silently before joining him. I never did answer that question from last night, did I? That's right. Hearing Yuni bring up the topic himself was a little perplexing. He stared at me up at the twinkling stars with an expression of ultimate understanding on his face. It's just as you said. I came from the year 2012. Huh? You're not surprised? Yeah, I was kind of expecting it after all. Then would you be surprised if I said this? Oh yeah, I would be. I haven't transferred even once. What? No, it'd be better to say we. Me and the other me at SPHIA. Unlike Satoru and Kokoro, we haven't been transferring over and over. But you've at least switched once, haven't you? No, we never switched. Not even once. My current consciousness is from the year 2012. My current body too is from 1 year in the future. Hey, wait a minute, then why is the future you here? Satoru? Try touching the snow. The snow? Yeah. As he told me to, I bent over and touched the surface of the snow. Smooth, powdery flakes, as if it had fallen only moments before. Right up until now, it was snowing around the shelter cabin. A whole lot of it too, a snowstorm. Now that he mentioned it, I finally remembered something. Inamoto's words. It's not a personality exchange that you two are undergoing. Your personalities aren't what's being transferred. What's really being transferred is space. Space itself is being transferred. To be specific, it's space that leaps through time and is transferred. In other words, it's a space-time transfer. Wait, please wait. Let me get all this straight in my head. Does that mean he just leaves the circumference of the bubble when the transfer is about to happen so he doesn't switch? Tapping at my temples, I walked around in circles in the snow. Eventually, I came to a halt and spoke. I see, that's right. This is Aosagi Island. If you climb that small hill, there'll be an ocean before you. The moon isn't up yet. It should look more like a last quarter moon now than a waning gibbous moon, but if what Inamoto said is true, then my consciousness remained at Aosagi Island, unmoving. What's transferring is space itself, which means that only this 110 meter circle around us, with the shelter cabin at its core, was at Mount Akakura. That's why soft powdery snow like this is here. That's right. But that doesn't have anything to do with my question, right? This is what I asked you. Why is the future you here, even though you've never transferred? Don't you know? I'm asking you because I don't know. I see. The truth is, those two things have everything to do with each other. And with that, he started explaining. In summary, it was like this. If you think about it, the solution was extremely simple. First of all, until now, I had thought that the very first transfer had occurred on January 11th, between 8 PM and 9 PM. But it seems like that wasn't actually the case. Before that, just once, one complete cycle of the space-time transfer had occurred. It was just a little after 5 PM on the evening of the 11th. At that time, there wasn't anyone inside of Mount Akakura shelter cabin. Yomogi Lin and Kokoro hadn't yet reached it. And then, a space-time transfer occurred. The SPHIA of 2012 had jumped back to the Mount Akakura of 1 year ago, and the Mount Akakura of 2011 jumped ahead to the Aosagi Island of 1 year later. At the time, the Yuni of the year 2012, the Yuni standing in front of me right now, was on the coast of Aosagi Island. He knew that the transfer was going to happen beforehand, he entered the shelter cabin alone, and was transported. In the meantime, what was happening in Mount Akakura 1 year ago? The crash of Flight 18 occurred after 4 PM. The Yuni of the year 2011, SPHIA's Yuni, had been thrown out into the snowfield and was wandering alone in the storm. And shortly before 5 PM, he wandered into the Mount Akakura circle. What he found there was SPHIA. There should have been a large wall around it, but the Mount Akakura circle was surrounded by a slightly elevated hill. The summit of the hill and the top of the wall were about the same height. As a result, Yuni had tumbled down the wall. Through the whirling snow, he saw a white-walled structure in the distance. Marshalling his fleeting consciousness, he managed to reach the building and take shelter there, and then he entered the empty room near the kitchen. Time passed, and then, a little after 5 PM, SPHIA returned to Aosagi Island, with the Yuni of 2011 still inside. And at the same time, inside the shelter cabin, the Yuni of 2012 was transported to the frozen Mount Akakura. After that, nothing particularly strange had happened. the two unis with their original consciousnesses still in their bodies had ridden across the boat known as space. That's what he meant by never having transferred even once, although more accurately, he had never separated from his consciousness even once. In truth, he travelled back and forth with that space transfer between 2011 and 2012. Sure. Now then, there's still one important matter. The newspaper. Why did a newspaper from the future exist inside the shelter cabin? I guess it came from outside the circle. Uni had the answer to that as well. I brought it with me. When he entered the shelter cabin, the Uni of the year 2012 brought along the newspaper printed on July 4th with him. Well, are you satisfied now? Totally. Yeah, to a certain extent. But there are still some things I don't understand. Like what? Why do you know so much about SPHIA? Huh? You haven't noticed yet? The me standing here right now is the me that was discovered by the rescue team on January 17th. The me who had narrowly avoided being caught in the avalanche. I know that. And 1 year later after that you go to the coast of Aosagi Island. Then on January 11th, 2012, there'll be another transfer, just before 5 PM. And you'll be inside the shelter cabin when it jumps away from Aosagi Island. What? Wait, something's off. If things continue like this, the Uni here will be found by the rescue team on January 17th again. It'll just keep going around in circles, and become an infinite loop. Should I give you a hint? I know everything that happened at SPHIA. From the 11th to the 17th, I know everything that happened within those 7 days. In other words, the me in the future is the me of the past. What do you mean? Uni only laughed softly and wouldn't answer. I wasn't sure where he'd got it, but he was holding a single feather in the palm of his hand. Not the feather again. A soft, downy white feather. The 5th day. How many days do we do? 7. We got a while to go then. A lot of revelations, considering we're like only 2/3 of the way. I woke up. It wasn't a slow, gentle awakening, but a sudden jerk as if I'd been shaken. I was curled up in the corner of the kitchen, lying flat on the floor. I didn't know what had happened. My body felt boneless, like a rubber doll's. My limbs too, leaden and senseless, for even the smallest movement. A transfer? My body and consciousness had probably returned to the moment I fell asleep in the cabin. Kokoro had woken up in SPHIA within the past 33 minutes, and then what happened after that? Why did my body feel so heavy? It can't be. Did someone do this to me? For the time being, I decided to take a look around. I tried to coax some response from my limbs, so I could get up. My legs were unsteady, and I swayed dangerously as I tried to stand and failed. As slowly as melting butter, I slid powerlessly back to the floor. I couldn't move in the slightest after that. All the muscles in my body felt flaccid, and when I tried to call out for help, my tongue got tangled up in itself and I couldn't speak a word. I collapsed on my back. I stared up at the ceiling. I was shrinking further and further into the distance until it was no larger than a grain of rice. The room had stretched itself into a gigantic tower, high enough to brush the heavens. I was trapped at the far end of the ever-lengthening corridor. Just what had happened to my body? Even when faced with such a wondrous vision, my consciousness still had a comparatively strong grip on reality. It was a rather eerie feeling. If the inside of my mind was so clear, then why couldn't my body move? Why was I seeing these visions? I tried to analyze the situation calmly. First of all, aside from the wound on my arm from 3 days ago, I wasn't in any pain. It didn't look like I'd been hurt or strangled, nor was I bleeding profusely. I just felt a sensation of nausea coming from my stomach. My throat was numb and stinging. What had Kokoro drunk or been forced to drink? Since this was a medical facility, it would be odd for drugs with hallucinogenic properties to be stored here somewhere, but why? Anyway, I can't do anything unless I get my body to move. If I just lay here on the floor like a rubber doll, I'll never find out what happened. But even with that said, what am I supposed to do? For now, should I try throwing up the contents of my stomach? The absence of pain was very likely an indicator that my current condition could be fatal. It's good that I managed to work that out, but it's almost impossible to vomit while lying face up. And if I wasn't even capable of lifting my arm a few millimeters to stick my finger down my own throat, nothing could be done. My breathing was laboured, but I was able to inhale and exhale. My mouth was full of saliva, probably because my throat was paralysed. I couldn't swallow or spit it out. It overflowed from the corner of my mouth and ran along my cheek. I must look so pathetic right now. At the thought, a warm tear fell from the corner of my eye. It wasn't a tear of frustration. It was just a tear, just a psychological phenomenon. For the past few minutes, from my transfer until now, I had yet to blink even once. A beam of light entered my eyes. It was too bright. I was blinded. The multicolored light spun in a rainbow circle like spinning fireworks. The sparks turned into particles of pure white. Fluffy snow came floating down. The endless corridor stretched above me began a shaking, swaying dance. The swarm of white flakes split into 3 whirling spirals and disappeared. From them, 3 snow fairies appeared. The tiny fairies slowly opened and began to flap their shimmering wings. They wore no clothes, but a red mark could be seen on their inner thighs. They began to frolic and play like children. A foul stench pierced my nostrils and rose to consume me. I saw a series of wondrous scenes paraded before me, a panoply of chaos which, while grotesque, held a mysterious radiance within. Thoroughly enchanted, I began to forget myself. Adrift in that thick, stinking, strangely beautiful blackness, I slowly began to feel ecstasy eating away at my body. And still the ceiling soared on, further and further. Now, it might not be that the ceiling was getting any further away, but me instead. My melting body was swallowed up by the floor, sinking into infinitely deep chaos, slowly sinking until I was subsumed. Thanks. I feel a lot better now. After what felt like an eternity in my comatose state, I'd finally regained the ability to move, and had gone to the living area. With my hand on the wall for support, I felt like an old man. Acting tough, are we? Are you still trying to play the hero, even after everything that's happened to you? Utsumi's words stung. She probably still had a grudge against me. But even so, when I collapsed in the kitchen this morning, she was the one who carried me back to my room. She was the one who'd given me an antidote to neutralize the effect of the drug. The antidote had supposedly been stored deep inside the dark little room where Enomoto had hidden. Of course, this wasn't first-hand information. Utsumi told me all of this just before. At any rate, she hadn't abandoned me. I was completely defenseless while I was out, but she didn't use that opportunity to attack me. And on top of all that, she was nursing me back to health. I couldn't understand Utsumi's true intentions. Well, she's not a bad person. She just wants to kill Hattori. I can understand that. Leaning against the window, I let out a sigh. I took my wristwatch from my pocket. The current time was 2 p.m. It'll take at least 12 hours for the chemical to completely leave your body, Utsumi continued, standing in front of me. He collapsed in the kitchen at 8 a.m. Now it's 2 p.m. 5 minutes past. Well, that would mean it's only been 6 hours. That's right. Why don't you just rest quietly until then? Will you sing me a lullaby? Don't be silly. You're probably just trying to show me that I'm healthy enough to joke, right? No, I'm serious. Don't strain yourself. I'm not. Even though your face is all twisted like that? Hey, I was born that way. Then try squeezing my hand. Saying that, she extended an arm out to me. I placed my hand over hers. I asked you to squeeze it. That's just touching, right? Even if she said that, there was nothing I could do. My fingertips wouldn't do as I told them. I was finally able to flex my fingers just enough to make a fist. Harder. I was in no condition to be making such fine adjustments. That's right, as Utsumi had said. I was just acting tough. Every muscle in my body had relaxed as though they'd been transformed into jelly or yogurt. By putting my entire body weight against the window, I was somehow able to stay standing. But it felt like I'd fall over if someone so much as breathed on me. And this was 6 hours after I'd collapsed in the kitchen. Thankfully, I wasn't seeing any more of those weird visions, but my body still felt completely limp. Can we consider this a handshake of reconciliation? Don't try to fool me. If you can't squeeze it, then say so. I kept silent. What was Utsumi thinking right now? I tried to sense her thoughts through the warmth of her hand. Was she still harboring murderous thoughts against Hattori? That very same Hattori was now sitting in one of the dining area chairs chatting with Yuni. I couldn't make out the conversation from here, but I could see them well enough. Hattori and Yuni, of course, were both safe. The anniversary of Junichi-kun's death, the 14th, had already passed, but even so, it wasn't as though Utsumi's grudge had wiped itself clean. Furthermore, even though I was currently in no condition to stop her, it looked as though she hadn't laid a hand on Hattori. Why? I had no idea what Utsumi was thinking. However, it looked as though she felt the same. I have no idea what you're thinking. She shook her head, as though flustered, and gently released my hand. Hey, who was it that made Kokoro take the drug? I asked as I clumsily rubbed my numb hands. I have no idea. It's not like I saw it happen. Could she have taken it herself? Kokoro did? There was an empty bottle on the kitchen floor. If someone had forced her to take it, they would have taken the evidence with them, right? I don't think that's necessarily the case. Well, whatever. I can think about it later. And what kind of drug was inside the bottle? I still don't know the details. That's right, I hadn't told you yet. Glancing discreetly over at Hattori, Utsumi opened the door to the terrace. She stepped outside. Maybe she didn't want Hattori to hear. I followed after Itsumi. The sky was refreshingly clear. There was no wind, and the sun hanging in the western sky threw bright sunlight down at us. Despite that the fact that I was in my pajamas, I didn't feel that cold. But then again, that could have more to do with my paralyzed nerves than the actual temperature. The cold air felt invigorating against my dulled body. There were actually 2 empty bottles, Itsumi said, as her exhalations turned to white vapor. 1 bottle of DMT, and 1 more containing a solution of harmine and harmaline. Have you heard of it before? DMT, I mean? No. DMT. Dimethyltryptamine. It's a substance classified as one of the most powerful hallucinogenic drugs. As for harmine and harmaline, you probably heard of them before. They're the MAO inhibitor. The MAO inhibitor, the same as what the rat ate. Yes, the chemical that killed it. Itsumi had said it outright, but I couldn't quite wrap my mind around it. Inside my head, I could still see the rat writhing in anguish on the dining area floor. Why'd Kokoro introduce such a dangerous drug into my body? Normally, and simply ingesting DMT wouldn't be enough to cause a hallucination on its own. The oxygen from the monoamine oxidation agent that naturally exists in the body acts to destroy the active ingredient in DMT. It breaks down tyramine the same way, after all. However, it's a different story when it's used together with harmine and harmaline. The MAO inhibitor suppresses that oxygenating ability, hindering the metabolism of the DMT. As a result, the hallucinogenic chemical remains in the body. That's it. But I don't understand. What? Anything. For the sake of argument, let's say Kokoro really did take the medication herself. Why would she do that? Didn't she know it was an MAO inhibitor when she took it? Even if she did she really understand how dangerous it could be? And then... Sorry. There's no use asking you that, is there? It might not be entirely true. I've said maybe she took it herself before, but it might be that one of the other 2 forced her to. One of them? In other words, you mean Hattori, right? Itsumi didn't answer. She walked away from me as though trying to evade the question. Quietly bending down, she dipped her hand in the snow collected on the terrace. I'm repeating myself, but I don't intend to cause you any trouble. Please understand. I responded with a question aimed at her hunched back. And that means you're still gonna try and stop me. She tried to kill you, you know. She removed her hand from the snow. Patting it dry, she approached me. Even if it was Hattori who gave her the drug, you don't know whether she intended to kill me or not, right? If she was trying to kill me, she wouldn't have needed the DMT. Besides, you told me 2 days ago, right? If you don't eat anything for 48 hours, the MAO inhibitor won't have any effect. I haven't eaten anything at SPHIA for more than 2 days now. I think Hattori knows that too. I wonder... That girl has DID, you know. She wouldn't know anything when she's not in the dominant personality at the time. The dominant personality? Those words grabbed me. Hasn't only the Hattori personality appeared in Inabushi Kaiko for the past few days? If that's the case, then a different personality could have assumed control without my knowledge. It's the same with you. With me. If you don't remember anything when you become Fuyukawa-san, right? Think about it. Instead of you, if Fuyukawa-san had eaten food containing tyramine, I would have died. That's how it is. But I'm alive right now, aren't I? What's important is whether the possibility exists. Do you know what willful negligence is? It's a mental state in which, while not consciously intending to do any harm, careless actions can, in fact, result in it. Even if there were no clear intent to kill, it might have been that you didn't really care if you did die. That can't... In all candor, it's a miracle that you're alive right now. It was only a coincidence that you didn't eat anything, right? Or am I wrong? You should think about this very carefully. You are wrong. He told her not to eat. Itsumi bent over again to scoop up more snow. She picked up a handful and flung it away, tracing its arc with her eyes. There was no wind, and a thin mist of snow drifted like a veil in the air. It's gotten colder. Let's go back. Without waiting for my reply, Itsumi disappeared into the building, leaving me behind. I skipped up the snow just as Itsumi had. I tried to grasp it, but just as before, my fingers were completely numb. After returning to my room, I tottered over to my bed and flung myself down. DMT, the MAO inhibitor. Did Hattori make Kokoro take it? Or was it Kokoro herself? Why? To what end? Willful negligence? If that was the case, then who had willfully done it? Incoherent thoughts flitted through my head. Sorry. Last night, the man calling himself Inamoto died. The idea of Inamoto being the one trying to kill me did pass through my mind, but the MAO inhibitor, assuming that my body consuming it was the result of willful negligence, then, just like before, is someone trying to kill me? Was that it? If so, then there's no way the late Inamoto could have done it. It would mean that there was a chance Inamoto had been completely uninvolved in the past attempts on my life. Was the true culprit elsewhere? I let out a sigh. I had to leave a message for Kokoro. Even one line would be fine. Who was it that made you take the drug? But the moment I decided to do that, and went to get up... Transfer? No? A dense ocean current coiled around me, as if to lap over my whole body. I felt as if I were being embraced by the sea, teeming with... coercive it? Don't know what that is. I've had this dream before. The primordial sea. I can no longer tell where my own existence begins or ends. It felt as if this whole vast sea were myself, and that there were no singular entity in existence here. My surroundings were completely saturated by a dazzling red light, a rhythmic sound, and a sweet scent that felt as if it would dissolve. I felt as though I were drowning in this comfortable warmth. Are we a baby? Cold. I immediately felt an intense cold cutting through me. A transfer? I understood right away. I, in Kokoro's body, was curled up in a bed in the shelter cabin, wrapped up in blankets. My arms hugged my shoulders. No matter how much I willed them to, my arms and legs wouldn't stop shaking. It was already beyond shivering. I was convulsing spasmodically, my whole body trembling uncontrollably. The cold assailed me from all sides, rattling my bones and threatening to crush me. Everything in my mind before the transfer, the DMT, the MAO inhibitor, was all blown away in an instant. All that mattered right now was preserving my own life. Everything else was mere luxury. I had to overcome this. That's what I wanted to do, but my head wasn't working properly. Even my blood had frozen in my veins. No oxygen or nutrients were nourishing my brain. Come on, calm down. Calm down. Calm down. Think. Just think. But I'm just thinking about thinking, getting nowhere. Worthless, empty thoughts whirled in my head, but I noticed one thing. The reason that her brain wasn't working properly wasn't just because of the cold. Hunger. Starvation. My body was violently craving food. I felt a hunger powerful enough to make me go insane. Even though I was disgusted with my current situation, food was the only thing on my mind. Cold. I want to eat. Cold. I want to eat. Cold. I want to eat, eat. I'm going to lose it for real if this keeps up. I was in a dangerous situation, walking the thin line between reason and instinct. I hung my head and continued struggling against the unwieldy desires budding inside me. A life or death battle. And before long, I felt the temperature inside the cabin raise a little, but only a little. My frozen blood slowly began to flow through my body again. I can't read today. I'm glad this episode's nearly done because I'm losing it. We'll get there. It's fine. The cold coiled around my spine finally loosened. It was still painfully cold, but somewhat better than before. My mind, too, gained a little leeway to think. Raising my head, I looked around the room again. My field of vision expanded. I noticed something that I hadn't been able to earlier. Yomogi, Lin, Yuni. For the first time I realized they were all there. They were scattered around the room and shaking as though on the verge of death. If it weren't for their shivering, I'd have taken them for dead. Other than that, none of them moved in the slightest. Their pupils were dry and hollow, like clouded marbles. Their breath escaping their lips was thin, frail and shallow, as though each one could be their last. I was struck by how much they'd changed. How could they have fallen apart so quickly in only one night? What in the world happened to them during such a short period? What's wrong? What happened? The cold may have abated, but my numbed lips wouldn't return to normal so easily. I asked them in a voice as dried out as the desert wind, but nobody said anything. Yomogi simply stared back at me with cloudy eyes. What about the stove? Did the fire go out? I crawled frantically out of the bed to confirm it. I opened the door of the stove and peered inside. Only blackened charcoal remained. How did this... What happened to the fuel? Didn't you chop up the table and chairs for firewood? Yukido-kun, I presume? You can understand what's going on just by looking, can't you? A cracked voice escaped from Yomogi's emaciated body. What's going on? I quietly looked around me. All the firewood that had been piled up in the corner of the room was gone. Only the axe leaning against the wall remained. There's nothing left to burn. It's not like we can start tearing down the cabin. His voice brimmed with hopelessness. And the food too. There's almost nothing left. Suddenly Yuni spoke up. No food? I glanced over at Yomogi for confirmation. Yomogi closed his eyes and nodded. No way. I peered into the stove again. I reached a hand in to feel the charcoal, not a trace of warmth. The cinders were ice cold. 2 more days until the rescue team arrives. In this cabin, having finally run out of fuel and food, they would have to survive 2 more long, cold nights. Can they really hold out until then? While I was looking elsewhere, the situation had gotten worse. What to do? Hey Kokoro, just what should I do? Grasping at straws now, I took out the voice recorder. No new messages. How discouraging. I couldn't think of anything to say to her from here. I heaved a sigh and put the recorder back. I checked the time on the wristwatch on my right wrist. Present time 3:15. Can't say that with any accuracy what time the transfer occurred. It should be in the shelter cabin for a period of 33 minutes. Then would the next transfer occur 5 minutes from now? 10? 15? Since the interval of time is so vague, it's pretty hard to tell. An ominous atmosphere hung over the small room. It reeked of a decay that dogged our every footstep. I suddenly choked. I needed fresh air. Without stopping to consider the consequences, I headed for the door. You want to die? As I put my hand on the doorknob, Yomogi uttered that single sentence. I'll come back before it gets to that. And with that reply, I opened the door. Maybe he didn't even have the strength left to stand, but Yomogi made no other move to stop me. Huh? It cleared up. A refreshing, cloudless winter sky. A thin, light blue film covered the sky. The sun, already sinking into the west, cast an intense light over everything. Reflected across the vast snowfield, it spread itself across the silver powder that surrounded me. I squinted against its brilliance. The glittering sunlight woke a memory buried inside me. It's not a personality exchange that you two are undergoing. Your personalities aren't what's being transferred. What's really being transferred is space. Space itself is being transferred. So we just drag all of them outside of the area, outside of the circumference, wait for the transfer to happen, and then bring them into SPHIA where there's food and shelter. Right? To be specific, it's space that leaps through time and is transferred. In other words, the space-time transfer. That's right, that's it. How could I forget something so important? This isn't Mount Akakura, we're on Aosagi Island. My consciousness never leaves the Aosagi Island of 2012. So that means the sky I see right now is the sky seen from Aosagi Island. Of course it'd be sunny. Because the sky I saw at SPHIA is the same sky I'm looking at right now. I see. That's why the temperature rose too. It said in the magazine found in my room at SPHIA, from the 15th until daybreak on the 17th, the whole Mount Akakura was in the midst of a severe storm. In short, just before this transfer occurred, the shelter cabin had been exposed to an intense cold. I couldn't move right after the transfer because of the cold. I understood. I've grasped the situation now. This is the Aosagi Island of 2012. My consciousness never jumped across time, rather an area of 110 meters in radius. With the cabin at its center, was transported to this world. And what should be my next move? Simple. I lead the 3 from the shelter cabin out of the circle. If I do that, then we won't be dragged into the space-time transfer anymore. The cabin will disappear, SPHIA will reappear, and we can go in there, eat some fucking dinner, and have a sleep. That means they'll all end up a year in the future, but now isn't the time to be worrying about the law of cause and effect. A life is irreplaceable. And what would happen if I sent them back to Mount Akakura of 2011? Without food or fuel, it's hard to survive on a snowy mountain for very long, and for the sake of argument, even if they could hold out until the 17th, according to history, all that awaits them is a horrible death buried alive in that avalanche. Oh wait. Aren't I forgetting something important here? Yuni. He's not the Yuni of 2011. Though he may act that way, he's not. The Yuni here, both in mind and body, is from the year 2012. He told me himself last night, no mistake about it. But why he lied about it, and why he returned to the shelter cabin like this in the first place, I still don't know for sure. What should I do? How long until the next transfer? Whatever the case, I'm afraid I don't have time to press him for an answer. Do I leave him alone and get everybody else out first? Damn it. I got no time to spare. Can't we just take him too and just have 2 unis? Still unsure what to do, I reached for the cabin door. I say we just have 2 unis. It'll be fine. What's the worst that can happen? Maybe it's like Shadow of Destiny. They touch each other and they cease to exist. Anyway, we're going to wrap this one up here because we're out of time for today. Perfect timing really for a transfer. Interesting. Getting there. I mean, that's the obvious solution, right? Lead everyone outside the circle. Bam. The cabin will disappear. SPHIA will reappear. Go into SPHIA. Food, shelter. Yukido's got the fucking swipey card to open the big gate. We're good. easy. Probably not, though. It probably won't be easy, but thanks for watching anyway, bros. I'll see you in the next one.